Go live and we'll get started.
Okay, so I just promoted Mr. Ottenberg.
Live and we'll get started.
Okay. The one attendee that I'm showing, Chair Edens, is Mike Orso. So we, if you want, I'll just leave him as an attendee. And if such time you want to promote him to a panelist, just let me know.
Okay, will do. We received his comments and I've got a copy. So.
Right. So Chair Edens, we are recording and we are live on YouTube.
Greetings on Tuesday, January 25th. I'd like to call the meeting of Economic Development to order. Please call the roll.
Chair Edens.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Here.
Councilmember Flasher.
Here.
Councilmember Galani, you said was absent. Councilmember Jaxie.
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Here.
All committees members accounted for.
Yep, except for Michael. Okay, so let's get a motion on the floor for approval of minutes, please. And thank you. Made by Councilmember Dodwell, seconded by Councilmember Clark. Do we have any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, let's do a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? Okay, thank you. All right, so sounds like we have one person virtually attending, and I received one comment written in, and there is a box that was checked to have the comment read into record. So would you like me to read it, or would you prefer a member of staff?
Chair Edens, we don't do that. In fact, after seeing that, I had thought, because a directive had been given many, many months ago to remove that part of all comment cards at the direction of the city attorney. No comments are to be read into the record either at a council meeting or a committee meeting by a staff member. So we have since, or we are in the process of removing that language from comment form. So we are not allowed to do that, Chair.
Okay, thank you for clarifying, and sorry for the inconvenience, Mr. Orzo. Since you are on the line, we'll go ahead and promote you to a panelist so that you can restate your questions.
Oh, lighting's kind of bad. Sorry, guys.
That's okay. That's all
How
right.
are you?
Excellent. You go right ahead, and then we'll do our best to answer. So go ahead.
I don't remember verbatim, what I asked, but I know it had to do with. I noticed there was going to be 4 topics that were discussed, and one of which was the Main Street connection, and I assume that means Main Street to 109. Is that correct? Oh, then never mind. Then I don't have a question.
Okay. All right. Well, then we'll go ahead and move on. And if you'd like to stick around and learn about it, it's a nonprofit dedicated to revitalizing economic development in communities, and we're seeking a grant to potentially use on other projects, and we're sending staff to a training session. So that's a pretty good summary. But again, if you want to stick around for the meeting to have anything.
Yeah, I am going to stick around. I was just interested generally. I live in Wildwood, and so I'm a bit interested, and I'll just listen. I'll be a fly on the wall.
Okay, well, while you listen, you can go ahead and Google Main Street Connection and check out their website.
Will do. Thank you.
All right, yep, no problem.
Chair Edens, 2 things. Number one, I am going to, let me find Mr. Orso, and I will put him back as an attendee. Yeah, I think I can do that. I think I can do that.
Sorry for any confusion.
No, Mike, you were just fine.
We don't bite.
Melanie, let's see here. Maybe he went back to, let's see here. How do I move him back to an attendee? Is that possible, Melanie?
It should be if you go over into the chat area.
Which is where I'm
Um,
at.
Okay, if you go
Oh,
to
here,
more.
change role. Never mind. I see it. Change role
Okay.
to attendee. So he will drop off here and then I'm going to give you a quick, there he goes. Okay. I will speak about, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to wait till it comes up on the agenda. Mr. Urso and I have a meeting on Thursday of this week. So when we get to that point on the agenda, I will update you and during that meeting, I will update him on what Main Street Connection is all about.
Okay.
But we have a meeting 2 days from now.
Okay. All right. So then do we have anybody else that has submitted a comment since emails went out or anybody else in attendees? I don't believe so.
Now we have Mr. Garitano and Mr. Orso remaining as attendees.
Okay. All right. So Councilmember Garitano, do you have any comments? If not, we'll close public comment session. No comments. Well, hello to you too. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. We have no items that are ready for action. We had our council meeting last night, if anybody is unaware and watching at home. And we did an update on the Lawn and Garden Summit with an attachment. So we've got several members that are trying to get to planning and parks. So if anybody doesn't have any new questions, we can go ahead and move on. Or and Steve, if you have anything to add since last night.
No, I don't. Mr. Vunich clarified that the trash for the event will be handled by the city, so there will be no additional cost for that. And then the lieutenant spoke to me after the meeting. He was sitting in place of the captain who was attending his father's funeral. The lieutenant said he will gather some information for the overtime, the police overtime on that day, and will incorporate that into the budget. So it can't be a whole heck of a lot of money, but I'll update that budget as soon as I get the information back from the captain then.
Okay, and sending that by email would be fine too as well. Okay, all right, so we're gonna just move on to the Missouri Main Street Connection. Go right ahead, Steve.
Chair, the only reason I put that on there was, as this committee knows, it was, that group made a presentation to the committee. You all wanted to move forward with it, and all I wanted to do was to update you all and let you know that Melanie, our Assistant Director of Parks and Planning, and Robin, our planner, will be attending the training. Let's see here. What do they officially call it? Hold on here. On February the 2nd, they're going to be going to the training that those folks, the Community Empowerment Grant Workshop in Jeff City on February the 2nd. So those two ladies will be attending to find out a little bit more details about the grant, to see if it makes sense for the city of Wildwood and so forth. So those ladies will come back and update me, and then I will update the committee.
Councilmember Dodwell.
I'm not certain what kind of information they'll be able to bring back or not. And excuse me, I'm going to mumble a little bit. I just got back from the dentist. So if I sound drunk, I wish I was. At any rate, I'd like to get perspective from both of those individuals that will be attending as to the benefits of that training for them in their work, and then also their perspective on how we might be able to utilize some of the things they learned in our role as the Economic Development Committee. And so if they could be present at the meeting too, or participate, I don't know if we have to pay overtime or what, but maybe they could write something up if you don't want to have them participating in the next meeting.
With Chair Eden's permission, certainly they can be available to attend the next committee meeting and present what they've learned at that grant workshop. So we can do that.
I think a report back would be just fine.
Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else? Questions, comments, concerns? Okay. All right, well, we will move on then to an update on department activity. So this was an item I asked Steve to cover tonight. I was hoping to get more information about a timeline for hiring an economic development replacement, what that would look like with job postings, the interview process, an estimation of how far we are out in months if we're trying to hold a replacement for a specific period of times for any budgetary reasons. And then finally as well, if Steve is still interested in working on the economic development guide, or if we are determining that it's best to kind of hold that project as well for an employee to be filled. So I'll go ahead and let Steve give us an executive summary on status.
Well, I'll give you a summary. I don't know if it's an executive one. We'll just say it's the peon summary. But anyway, thank you, Chair. With regards to the status of replacing Julian, at this point, there, as far as activity in the city of Wildwood, I am receiving on a regular basis emails and phone calls from folks that want to have a conversation about a particular parcel of land or occupying one of the vacant buildings. The most recent one, well, actually the second one, I got an email yesterday about somebody wanting to see if the city wants to do a swap on a parcel of land. But I did receive another inquiry. I've been working with a real estate agent who has been trying to fill the Jack in the Box, the old Jack in the Box building. So I'm presenting this before Mr. Flasher asked me, because he warned me last night he would, but I was aware of it anyway, which is why I have it on the agenda. However, that gentleman asked if that particular piece of property was zoned such that it could be an adult toy store operation, and clearly that doesn't fit what we do here in Wildwood. So I told him no, but he has been looking at various things. So, but lots of folks have reached out about, and Joe Vunich and I primarily have been meeting with them to talk about a potential winemaking business or this business or that business. So there hasn't been a real urgent need to have somebody from an economic development standpoint, because there's lots of people coming to us. Which is what I said in the very beginning in terms of, we don't have to do a real hard job of it going and selling Wildwood. However, I've had a couple people reach out to me about the position. One of those is Mike Orso. Mike Orso is a gentleman. He is a Wildwood resident. And Mike reached out to me in the past, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, he owns a bike and coffee shop in the city. And he has been in conversations with the developers of the Prime Place to open up a similar operation on the first floor of the Prime Place. So he is involved in that operation, one and hopefully two separate locations. Mr. Orso also, I believe, is in the financial services industry. However, he wanted to speak to me about the open position. I have his resume. As I mentioned earlier, he and I will actually be speaking on Thursday. So we're going to talk about a couple of things. That'll be the first time that I will meet him in person. Seeing him tonight on screen was actually the first time I've actually seen him. The rest of them have been phone calls and emails. So it was nice to put a face to a name. So we will be talking about the position and my vision of that position for the city, as well as what he wants to do. Now, the beauty of this is that in the last phone conversation that Mr. Orso and I had, which was last week, he indicated that he has availability to do some things on a part-time basis. And I'm going to see if he's interested in, and so that I can take advantage of that, because what I would like for him to do is to work on the economic development guide, and some of the other things that have kind of been sitting for a while since Julian's departure that I have not had the time to do. So I'm hopeful that Mr. Orso will actually be able to help move some of these initiatives forward. So that is the plan with regards to, and then I had a meeting with the gentleman today on a different topic, but he also brought up that he has a friend who he could not name, who is concerned, who is currently employed and was interested in the city of Wildwood. So that resume will be coming my way shortly as well. So I'm looking at various. There have been a couple others that didn't fit the bill in terms of what we would be looking for, what I would be looking for in that position. So it's moving forward at an appropriate pace. But like I say, I'm hopeful that actually Mr. Orso and I can work together and maybe get some of these other initiatives done. In particular, Chair Edens, you've brought up a couple times the economic update in terms of where we are in the interview process and so forth. So maybe I'm hopeful that we'll be able to move forward on that.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to see that we're moving in the right direction. It sounds like he's certainly able to help out. I just want to go ahead and state some concerns if in the future, just as a blanket concern, hiring somebody full-time or part-time in a position that is also a business owner now or is planning on opening a business could be a conflict of interest because of the types of access of information that they would have on bids, the ability to help local businesses negotiate real estate values, other tax finance incentives. So that would be something to think about. So I'm not sure I'm also just comfortable with hiring anybody, qualified or not, without having a public open listing of the job and a real competitive open market to see what other candidates that we could get, especially from economic development fields. My other thought with the guide as well is there are firms as well that we could contract to finish the rest of it. They do specialize in that and that may have competitive pricing. But certainly, let's try to expand the applicant pool beyond just maybe who reaches out to us, I would think, because again, the potential for having access to information while owning a business could be concerning, especially if it affects your competitors. So,
Well, Chair Edens, I appreciate you bringing up your concerns. I've hired lots and lots and lots of people in my career, which spans an awful lot of years, as you know. The concerns that you've expressed are the same concerns that I have in terms of who we might want to bring into the city and work in my department. So that would have been the conversation with Mr. Orso to find out what his plans were with his businesses and so forth. And certainly trying to run a business with one and possibly two locations would make it difficult to do something on a full-time basis. And again, these are just some folks that have reached out that having some conversations. But certainly when I get to the point where it is a position that seriously needs to be filled, there would be the appropriate process in terms of posting and notifications in terms of getting that out, which we do between, and that's why we have Carla. Carla being the HR coordinator knows these rules inside and out. And for any of us that might forget the rules, we always have her there to help us get back on track. But appreciate the expression of concern, but we're on top of it.
and I would love to add at this moment that a coffee and bike shop is most welcome and seems like it would be very appropriate in our town. And if the choice was between wonderful anchor businesses like that or part-time work, I would just love to have him involved in the business community and certainly wouldn't want that to be an either or choice, but I would think the position dictates it. The other thing too is before those interviews are conducted, I think we need to, especially you and I, need to go back and touch base and re-summarize the comments the committee and council did, because at times it felt like our visions were not aligned. And so I really want to make sure that the visions are aligned before we set job expectations and kind of conduct those interviews. So right now I've got Councilmember Dodwell, Councilmember McCutcheon, and Councilmember Jackson on the list in speaking order. Councilmember Dodwell.
thank you very much for your comments. And I appreciate what everybody's concerned about. I think Ms. Edens kind of hit the nail on the head for me in that while this is a city position, I feel like we need to make sure that the city administrator pulls together a committee of at least 1 to 2 individuals from this group who are involved with economic development when we get to the point of hiring a full-time individual. And I also think that we would be better served to get somebody on board sooner rather than later. We have storefronts that are empty. We have new residents moving into the city of Wildwood. And I just feel it's imperative that in addition to those new residents moving in, we get some diverse businesses to be able to move into the city of Wildwood to continue to support what the city itself wants to see in the form of parks, in the form of recreational events. So I know there was some question at one point as to whether economic development should be the person that is doing the economic development should be at the same level as the directors that report to you, Mr. Cross, but I'm not going to go into that battle this evening. But I still think we would be better served to have someone that is diligently looking at how we can obtain, retain, and enjoy additional resources for income into the city of Wildwood, because we always have this constant little devil sitting on our shoulder that says that the county shared use tax, or whatever they call it, could be disappearing. And so I just feel it's very critical that we get some type of replacement as quickly as possible, because we have storefronts that are closing, and we need to have somebody dedicated to filling those voids in those locations. That's just my perspective.
Thank you, Councilmember Dodball. Councilmember McCutcheon?
I was just going to state the same points that you did, Chair Eden, so I do agree with you, and thank you for bringing those up.
Okie dokie. I appreciate your comments, Councilmember Dodball and Councilmember McCutcheon. Councilmember Jaxie?
Yeah, so before Katie said it, what I was thinking was, Steve, you mentioned something in your comments about that you feel like things are progressing at an appropriate pace. I wanted to share with you that for me, I'd love to have seen the job filled already. So for me, I don't know how else to say it other than the sooner we get somebody in there, the better, in my opinion. Not that you're wrong. I agree with you that you and Joe and whoever else in the city staff is fielding calls already from businesses, et cetera. I think you all are wise and can provide input, but you also have other things that you need to be focused on, or that you are focused on at the same time. I want somebody in this job that does, this is their sole focus. I had a really high opinion of Julian, and I got a lot of positive feedback about him from the few people that I have talked with, especially business owners, et cetera, in the area. So the sooner we get somebody in there, I just think that's one of the best things we can do for the city. So just wanted to encourage, if there's something I can do to help in your hunt, et cetera. I do agree with Chair Edens. I think this is, one of those things where we got to put it out there and try to get as many people for you to interview and look at, so you can pick the best qualified candidate from that pool that you see. I know back when I was hiring regularly, it would go out on USA Jobs, and that would give me a wide pool to choose from. So I hope we do. I'm not familiar with what Wildwood does, but I hope it's something like that where it would solicit, input from a lot of different sources, so that you have the ability to pick from a deep pool, not just a wide one too. Thanks.
I think just to recap, we would love one as soon as possible, but not so soon that it rushes it with a poor candidate. So we would like the just right Goldilocks bed. Scott Ottenberg.
Thank you. Mr. Cross, I was wondering, could you send out, I think you may have done this in the past, but could you please send out a listing of the criteria that you use when you're talking to people about this position?
Can you be more specific?
For example, you must have some particular bullet points or some boxes that you would like to check regarding the person's background or skill set or something of that sort. If that's something that you can share with us, that might be helpful. I deal a lot in sales and marketing throughout the St. Louis area, and occasionally I run into people that are looking for positions, and who knows, maybe I could develop a lead for you.
Be glad to, sir.
Okay, so keeping time in mind, we've got about 20 minutes left. We've had some good discussion on this. Are we ready to move on? Okay, I believe we're ready to move on. So I asked for the North Point development to be on this agenda because it is just such a big development proposal. I'll let Mr. Cross introduce it, but the reason I asked was for him to also give an update on what that process looks like going through city boards, where they're already at in the process, and what he kind of sees that timeline like first. And then I've got a couple follow-up questions too. So go ahead, Mr. Cross.
Thank you, Chair. You all probably know at this point that the city has been approached by a development firm called North Point Development, and they are interested in the property that is located on North Etherton Road, which is down at the bottom of Etherton Road across from the airport. So as you are heading north on Etherton Road, it would be on your left-hand side. This organization, and I attached to the email, and there's been multiple articles. So this was one article in terms of who these folks are. So I won't go into a whole lot of detail about who they are. You've seen that. But they are proposing a $2.5 million distribution center. That area is zoned industrial, so it's limited in terms of what can go there. But the proposal is for about 8 or 9 different buildings. These folks have built these similar types of developments from Washington State to Florida, and they have several in the St. Louis area already. These folks came before the Development and Zoning Review Committee. This was a couple weeks ago, and that was made up of the mayor and a couple of the planning and zoning folks, myself, Mr. Vunich. So we heard their initial presentation. After that, Mr. Vunich, Mr. Newberry, we met with them because they wanted to get an idea then what the next steps were in terms of what information they need to provide to the city. And so Mr. Vunich has provided that information to them. They are looking for tax abatements, which is something the city in and of itself cannot do simply because we don't have taxes that we can abate. But there are various tools. It's a tool called a Chapter 100 tax incentive that they use in the other developments. The city attorney is looking into that. Again, not something necessarily that the city is able to offer, but we are trying to get creative in terms of what the city may be able to do. The development folks had sent an email to the mayor and I last week and want to have a sit-down meeting about some things. I don't know what the topic is. So right now it is with planning and zoning, giving them information. we've had a conversation, and there was a meeting today. I don't have the results of that in terms of meeting with St. Louis County as it relates to North Etherton Road and the increased traffic and what will need to be done there. So that is an issue that is being looked at. And then when the mayor gets back in town, if he chooses, then we will meet with them to see what other information. But quite honestly, the next step would be for this group then to come before planning and zoning. That really is the next step. And that probably isn't going to occur for a little bit of time, because there's quite a bit of information that they need to pull together and questions that we'll need to answer before it goes to P&Z. They are trying to fast track it, but as you know, there's a process, especially for development of this size, and then especially since there are some tax issues that we're going to have to work around.
That actually answers part of my questions, which were on abatement, just simply because the way the article was written, it indicated that we had the power to abate other political subdivisions money, including the counties, which I thought was rather odd. So it's that is not correct, right, Mr. Cross?
Those kinds of things are being looked into.
They're being looked into. Okay.
Well, again, you know, there are certain things that the city may be able to do depending on what the city attorney is able. And the city attorney, by the way, has worked with this organization on other developments in the area, so he's quite familiar with Chapter 100 and what the city of Wildwood can and cannot do. But for the city cannot arbitrarily, it would seem to me, speak up and for tax abatements for the school district or the library or the county or anything like that. So a lot of things need to be looked at before this process can move further, because that is a big part of their proposal to the city, is this Chapter 100 tax abatement. So that's a key element of this development.
And I will say too, certainly what I would anticipate this committee, or I can tell you that I would be asking is when we get to those points and those discussions, that I would want an opinion in writing, especially if I'm being asked to review it, whether it's superficially or with any sort of legal jurisdiction about what their opinions are. I do know Rockwood is looking at moving away from bonding for a more consistent tax stream. I know that the Monarch Fire subdivision that is currently in the valley is a rather small one. I know this because it's one of my polling locations, and so I would wonder if they would want to expand that one, because it's been there for a while and things have changed. There's been 2 outlet malls, and this is a rather large structure. So I would certainly not feel comfortable speaking for them. And I would say that, you know, it is very common for developments to ask for abatement. What is not common is that there's, you know, so many cities have taxes to abate. They have property taxes, so they're used to probably a process themselves, and maybe even in unusual water, since we don't have it to give away. It makes decisions a little easier because we wouldn't see an immediate loss, but we may be able to cover additional costs that are accrued on through road use, with increased sales tax revenue from employees shopping in the valley. But usually in economic development, there's a but-for test. Would this project occur but for this incentive that you're giving away? And so I would suspect that they chose this location because logistically it makes sense. How close it is to the interstate, it's flat land, although we certainly know that that area has been flooded before. And we were probably chosen as opposed to the Chesterfield side, or, you know, St. Charles or St. Peter's, because we don't have property tax. And so I wonder if they will be, you know, have some wiggle room on some of the other abatements that they're looking for. But yes, I would be interested to know what that package looks like. It would help me, even if we don't have jurisdiction, kind of understand their thought process for moving in, whether they're asking for, you know, X number of years worth of abatement and then a phasing in process over a rate or a fixed in rate, you know, what that would look like. And usually cities are very excited to do abatement projects simply because there's so many cities right now that are desperate for employee centers or having population drains. And so we just don't have kind of those same circumstances because we're a bedroom community as well. So they may be used to negotiating from a different group of people that are looking for that. Well, last two things, and then I've got Councilmember Dodwell and Councilmember Clark. One of the other ways that cities often interpret whether an incentive package is worth it. And again, they may be, collecting everything from property to some sort of income tax, but they ask and want to know, are we talking about full-time jobs, part-time jobs, salaried jobs? The reason why I ask is because we would better be able to anticipate where these employees would be living, right? So if we know that it's jobs that are hourly, that may pay $17 an hour or a living wage, which would be good, we would know as a city that we don't have maybe a lot of affordable housing or enough options. And so we would likely be seeing no net change in foot traffic for shopping, let's say, in the heart of town center or something like that. So it would help us, especially because we're talking about projected growth in our economic development guide, understand what the more specifics about these jobs. I had Councilmember Dodwell and then Councilmember Clark, or Councilmember Clark, did you have your hand up first? Thank you.
I don't care.
Councilmember Dodwell can go ahead.
Okay, Councilmember Dodwell.
I just had a quick question on process and logistics, Mr. Cross. I thought that the development team meetings were supposed to have representatives, at least one of the council members from a location involved in those meetings with potential business owners into Wildwood. I know when Julian was here, he was inviting the council members to participate as a member of that group as well, just so they were aware of what was going on or what the interest was in their particular area. Maybe you've already decided to do that and it just wasn't mentioned this evening.
The council members were in fact involved as part of the DZRC, the Development and Zoning Review Committee. Ms. Clark, were you part of that?
Yes, I was.
I believe so. So there was at least one council member and perhaps, so as I say, there's representatives from the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is made up of council members, as well as Mr. Vunich, Ms. Ripito, myself, the mayor. So there were quite a few folks on that initial call with this development group.
No, I understand. I just wanted to see if we had done away with having wherever a particular entity wants to develop, that we involve the council members for that particular location, be it Ward 1, be it Ward 7, 8, it doesn't really matter. Just want to make sure that they're kept abreast of what's going on in their ward.
Right. Now, the process has not changed from the way it's always been.
Thank you.
So just as we get closer, as you said, economic development it sounded like come before planning and zoning during their meeting, but as we get closer, I'm sure we'd love to be a part of the discussions. Councilmember Clark.
Thanks, Chair Edens. I, of course, had some, I'm going to give a bullet points because of time, but some of the things that came up at the meeting that we were all at with the zoning and development were that we're very concerned about what it's going to do to the trail and the levee, of course, because it butts right up next to it. On the plan that they showed at the meeting, they did tell me that they don't go up as close to it as the plan makes it look like. But those are things that we're really concerned about, as well as there's a crude oil pipeline that goes down through that property that they would be building over the top of. So that's a little bit of concern to me. I would like to know if how Chesterfield feels about this, because they're right across the street, and if they have plans for their upcoming meetings to discuss this, so we could maybe find out from them what they think about it. The name of this location is, it doesn't fit with Wildwood. It's called, they want to call it Boone Valley Logistics Center, but they are open to changing that name. Just so you know that censure, something censure involved in that name would probably be better, because that's the area, the historic area. Also would like to know their planting, what they want to plant around it, how they want to maybe have some coverage of the front of that building and the side that's on Censure, and the front that would be on Etherton Road. And the traffic would be mostly coming, they say it's all going to come from 6440 to the location and back to 6440. I'm not convinced that trucks wouldn't end up on Wild Horse down Etherton Road to the south, but that is the plan. The trucks are not allowed in Ward 1 on south of that area on Etherton Road. So that would be a problem if they tried to make that turn, especially up the hill. And other than the Chapter 100 tax abatement that I personally don't really understand the whole details about that. Those are my main concerns at this point. I would also like to know, they say they're going to develop in phases. What does that mean? How does that affect the jobs that would be there? Are there just going to be a few jobs for 2 years, 5 years? I don't know that plan. So what is the phasing in of that area? That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Clark. That was a very helpful update, but I also mirror your questions and your concerns as well. And I would just pile onto the list as well. There's a lot of architectural discussion about redesigning large warehouses after the Amazon tornado incident, and construction methods involved in warehouses with extensive square feet. So I would just like to know in the future, and this is really more for P&Z, what their plans are for disaster mitigation. But it becomes important for us in economic development when you're asking to not pay taxes towards a first responder district in the event of a disaster like a tornado. So those are how those two things are linked, and so it is a question in my mind. And so just keeping track of the time, we do have just about 5 minutes left, but this is a pretty big topic. So are there any other questions for Mr. Cross? Okay, so since this is an evolving permitting and site plan development process and discussion, I'll ask for some regular updates to be on the agenda as well going forward. Okay, so the last item, I had asked for sort of a year in review. So how many businesses closed? Did we know why? What were the new licensing? What the retail vacancy rate was? Area unemployment? All of that good data. Mr. Cross, what do you got for us?
Good data might be good, but it is not something that I have access to right now. So I cannot report on and those kinds of level of detail. I can point out that we do have a new business that is moving in. I think I pointed it out in my weekly report. The exercise coach is taking over where Milk and Honey is. I'm going to reach out to that gentleman and see if he wants to have a grand opening or ribbon cutting ceremony, which we just had in the city of Wildwood that Mr. Garitano and the mayor and I attended. Rockwood Eye Care. But in terms of that level of detail about number of businesses opened and so forth, I've not had time to address that sort of thing at this point, Chair.
Okay. Will you be able to address it for the next council work session, just as a memo on that?
I'll have to look at it and see what it might take to get that information. I don't know since I've been involved in the past and digging that out where that might be. So at this point, I can't commit.
Okay, if not, then just go ahead and plan on it being on the next agenda. And I know that there were some charts that Councilmember Clark we added to the bottom of the monthly report that the economic development manager had. And so somewhere there's a pre-existing line chart that could be updated on a few metrics, but the rest would probably have to be collected. I don't know if Bureau of Labor Statistics has any good regional data information updates. I would imagine there's some out with the last census as well. Okay, so I will just mention that I did read a little bit more about what the former owners of Patterson Family Farms wrote in reasons for closing, and it was an increase in overhead in addition to increase in supplies. So I'm not sure if when they said overhead and supplies were listed separately, if they experienced a rate hike in the middle of the pandemic or not. But I was able to kind of learn a little bit more about, reasons why they were looking to no longer have a specific storefront. But if you do have a new ribbon opening for the former location of Milk and Honey, give us a week's notice and as a committee, and we'll try to turn out as a committee as well. By the time I saw the last ribbon cutting in your update, it was Friday, and the ribbon cutting was Saturday, and I wasn't able to make it. But certainly, I think if we had more notice, we would all try to turn out for that. Councilmember Clark.
I'm sorry, I still had my hand up from before.
Oh, that's okay. Better to call on you twice than skip over y'all. So it's 6:18. I know you have a 6:30 meeting. So let me ask, are there any other questions? We have, nothing ready, nothing to talk about under the not ready for action. Do you have anything on other business news and updates that you haven't mentioned, City Administrator Cross?
Not at the present time. Thank you,
Not
Chair.
at the present time. Okay, so this would be an excellent moment for a motion to close. Made by Councilmember Flasher, seconded by Councilmember Jackson. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All right, opposed and abstained. So thank you for joining us tonight for economic development. I really appreciate it, and have a good
Thank you,
evening.
Chair.
Thank you, Chair.